Hello everybody, thanks for clicking on the video. Today we're going to be talking about the MCAT, the dreaded medical college admissions test that puts the fear of God into pre-meds everywhere. This is the exam you have to take to get into medical school. And coming from a first-year medical student, I get a lot of people asking me questions about how long did you budget to prepare for this exam, what resources did you use, did you take a course, did you read the books independently, and I'm going to lay that out for you today. Generally speaking, there's a core, essential set of resources that are helpful for everybody, and everything past that is elective. Resource overload is a real issue, and I would urge you just to pick a few things that work for you and stick with them. Now, if you want to go to a decent, middle of the road and above MD school, or any MD school in general, you should be aiming for 510 plus. This can vary a little bit with demographics, but for me, I was aiming for 510 plus, and you should be too. When it comes to DO, you can get away sometimes with more so lower 500s and above, but just for the sake of argument, everyone who's taking the MCAT, aim for that 510 and above. Don't take this exam until you're getting that on your practice test, which I'm going to go over in a little bit. This is how they break up the MCAT. There's 4 sections. There's the chem, physics, cars, bio, biochem, psych, soc, and some other stuff. Statistics is thrown into another one, and they composite this into an overall score. Me specifically, I got a 95% for my, if you want to do by percentile. This equates to a 518. Now, this varies year to year. One year, a 518 might be a 93%, the next year it might be a 96. 50 percentile is usually around 501, 502, 503, generally speaking. So if you're going for that 510, you're looking at upper 70s, 80th percentile, which is what you should be aiming for to get into multiple MD schools. So you can pick which school is best for you, theoretically. Anyways, let's get away from the score and let's just get into the actual resources that are going to help you get a good score on your exam. I suggest everybody makes an MCAT folder, okay? Make a folder on your desktop that you can throw in resources, charts you made, diagrams that you downloaded, things like that, so on and so forth. I specifically would start with a review sheet. So for every practice question you do something like this. Make a spreadsheet where you have the section, the summary of the question, basically what was the question asking you, why you got it wrong, how you approached the question, what the right answer was, and then your reasoning. So how next time you can work your way to the right answer. You can do this for any type of question. I did a bunch, and over time, if you're studying months for your MCAT, this adds up to, hundreds and hundreds of questions, which the week before your exam, I would suggest you go back and just skim through these because it won't take that long. You've already typed up why you got it wrong. It should stick in your head if you just read through it again, all these questions the week before your exam. I know that's what I did, and it worked really well for me. For example, which one of the following has a large ionic radius? I knew the question had to do with periodic trends. I just had a lucky guess. So maybe you actually got the question right on your practice exam, but it was due to a lucky guess, and you want to actually come up with a way to get the question right every single time because you can't count on being lucky on your MCAT. Throw those in here as well. Throw the ones in here that you absolutely get wrong, and make sure you review. Now, where are you going to get these questions from? Well, I'll tell you, that's going to come from practice exams. And every resource has its own practice exams, but I would suggest you steer clear of all the Kaplan and all the individual practice exams that they sell, and just go with the actual ones provided by the people who make the exam. And here they are. You have the AAMC, MCAT official prep practice exams. There are 4 of them, and I would suggest taking all of these before your exam. They're $35. They're moderately pricey, not an insane amount, but if you think about it, if you just drop the money now, do all these practice exams, it's going to save you money in the long term by not having to pay for another go at the MCAT. It's going to cost a lot of money to take the MCAT over and over again when you could have just dropped the money the first time around and done well and been done with it, okay? So on the days you're going to take these practice exams, pretend like it's the real deal. 1 month out from my MCAT, I took practice exam 1. I got up at 6 a.m. like I would on the real exam day. I ate the same breakfast. I made sure that I took it all the way through. No cheating yourself. Pretend it's the real deal. Take the 30-minute break in the middle like you will on the real test day, and really practice going fast, because I think the number one issue for people is that they get bogged down in questions they don't know. Make sure you have a solid guessing strategy. When you just don't know it, send it and move on and focus on the questions that you can get right. Because lots of times they throw in a bunch of easy questions at the end of the exam. I know that's what they did for mine. And they're counting on you not budgeting your time correctly and not being able to get to those gimmies at the end. So this is really helpful just in knowing practicing the content and your question taking strategy, but also in just getting those soft skills down, getting in the routine of taking an exam that's 6, 7, 8 hours long. So I cannot recommend these enough. They will give you an accurate representation of what your real score was. For me, I remember I scored 512 on the first one. Obviously, not what my final score ended up being, but it was the first one I took, so obviously my score is going to be lower. I think on exam 2 I got a 514, then I got another 514, and then I got a 517, and my final score ended up being 518. So they are really similar to what the actual exam will be, and they're a great predictor of how you're going to score. And remember, if you're scoring 495 on these practice exams, don't take the exam next week, all right? Take another few months off, and then at that point, if you've exhausted all these practice exams, then you can dip into the third-party ones, because you don't want to do these over again. You're just going to have the answers memorized by then. And then wait until you get to the 500s, score 510s on your practice exams, then you take the MCAT. These are here to gauge your preparation more so than anything, I'd say. Now, how are you actually going to study for these? I mean, you have to study a bunch before you actually take practice exams. Well, I would suggest you get a prep book, and the good old-fashioned paper or hardback book. You can't go wrong with that. I personally used the Princeton Review. Now, you can take courses. You can have them walk you through this week by week by attending Zoom lectures or whatever. There's prep courses. Everyone sells a prep course now. I would urge you just to steer clear of the prep courses. It works for some people, and I'll give it that. But it's just going to be hard to take a prep course when you're going to college full time. You're going to. I know I was a junior when I was studying for my MCAT. I studied from January of my junior year to May-ish of my junior year, and took the MCAT in June. So 6-ish months of prep. And if you're going to class full time, if you're taking 20 credits, like I was, how are you going to go to additional classes? No, I need to do it at my own pace. I need to have the books so I can just, when I get back from class late at night, I can study at my own, on my own schedule at late hours whenever I need to fit it in. So, and if you can teach yourself something, you're always going to remember it better than if someone else taught it to you. Okay, and these books really work well in allowing you to teach yourself this information. Now, there's a lot of debate between Princeton Review and Kaplan. Which one is better? There's also some other ones. I would steer clear of all the other books besides these two. These are the tried and true books that you can't go wrong with. Personally, I use Princeton. Princeton is for the people who need all of the extra detail, who want these really dense, thick books and want to know that they've seen every piece of information that they possibly could before they take their exam. Kaplan is more so, look at how much thinner these books are. These are more so the books that are for people who can't sit down and study all day and they just want something that's concise, colorful, laid out super simply, and they can zoom through and get to practice questions sooner. You really can't go wrong with either of them. I specifically, like I said, use Princeton. I got a 518, but hey, n equals 1. I know people who got 516 and so on and so forth with Kaplan, and they did great with Kaplan. Either way, I would suggest use the books that are going to allow you to get to practice questions sooner or do better on practice questions. The number one biggest regret I had from my MCAT prep was not doing practice questions until like a month before my exam. It took me 5 months to get through all these books because look how dense they are. I knew the material really well from review, but at the end of the day, the MCAT comes down to how good you are at taking exams, not how well you know the information for the most part. Knowing the information is probably like 30% of the exam. The rest is timing, being able to recognize buzzwords and so on and so forth, which is only going to come from practice questions. So I would recommend more so doing practice questions way earlier. If you're taking 6 months to study like I am, maybe split it into 3 and 3. 3 months of practice questions, 3 months of content review instead of doing 5 in 1 like I did. I think if I would have taken more time to do practice questions, I would have scored better than 518. And looking back, I wish I would have. But anyways, pick whichever book works for you. They're a couple $100s. I know they're a little bit pricey. You can get them used, which is a pretty good deal. I think I actually ended up getting like a year-old Princeton review like from the year before, and it worked just fine for me. So if you need to save some money by buying a year-old or a used set, go for it. You can't go wrong either way. Next up, highest yield resource. UWorld, 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 UWorld. You can't go wrong with UWorld. This perfectly mirrors the MCAT. As you can see over here, this is how the MCAT looks. There's a blue header, white background, very bare bones questions, and UWorld is going to mimic that and get you in the headspace for the real exam. They give you amazing, amazing explanations for each and every question. Whether you get it right or wrong, go down and read the explanations they give you on UWorld. It's also kind of a pricey prep resource, but hey, this was designed originally for med students. I mean, we use this for step 1. I'm using this for taking my step exam. So if you can get familiar with UWorld ahead of time and just get using it now, it's going to pay dividends in the future, and I can't recommend it enough. You can do question blocks, so I would usually, each section on the MCAT is some weird, like 49, 50-ish questions or something like that, and you can go and say, I want to do 50 questions in Psych Soc, and I want it timed, and I'm going to take this like it's the real Psych Soc section on the real exam. So once again, you're mimicking how the real exam will be. Super helpful, super useful. This is probably the number one thing. If you want to get like a upper teens, if you want to get a 520 plus, you go on all the forums, all the people who are scoring as well as me or better than me say UWorld. Use UWorld. It is truly the God resource that you should be using. Finally, I'm just going to throw in some other things I think are helpful. You can use the Lazy Man doc, the MCAT Bros Lazy Man doc. It's free. Look up basically the Psych Soc Lazy Man doc on Google, type in or into Reddit, and there'll be a download link for it. It's 100% free. And there's 2 varieties. There's the 300-page version, which I'm looking at, and there's also an 86-page version, which I have downloaded, which just looks similar, but it's a little bit more concise. Now, why are you using this doc? This is for Psych and Soc, just because Psych and Soc is really, I'd say, the odd man out of the 4 sections. It's the one that the information is easiest to learn. And you can really just do well on this section by reading through this entire doc, just passively reading through it. Do a couple pages a night, maybe 10, 20 pages a night for a few weeks, a few months, whatever it takes to get through this doc, and you'll be ready. And then just go to UWorld and start doing the Psych Soc practice and questions. This is all you really need to know. It's perfectly summarized. And if you can't bear reading through that many pages. Do the 86-page one, and you'll be absolutely fine. Cars is the one you really can't study for. It's just practice. Cars is the one you have to do, like I said, UWORLD practice exams for, because it's just reading comprehension. There's nothing to study for. The bulk of your review is going to be for that chem, physics, bio, and biochem. And for those, there's also some other resources you can use. But I would suggest sticking to the books. And for physics, for example, type out all the equations. There's only, I don't know, I think it was 86 equations, maybe closer to the 100, I'm not sure. But for 6 months, that's not very many equations to memorize. I specifically typed up all the equations, pulled out my TPR book. They lay them out real nice for you, and I typed them up to engrave them into my mind. If you can write something yourself, you know that you are engraving that into your memory, and you had to think through it when you were typing this equation up. So type it up, categorize them by section, and really focus on memorizing the big ones. Like I said, I memorized them all, but looking back, it may have been unnecessary. You can probably get in the 90% plus on your section. I did a 96. Just memorizing probably 50% of these, the big ones. Your constant accelerations, all your F equals ma stuff. There's going to be a ramp question. There's always a ramp question. And then once you get to sort of the crazy, like, oh, we're doing a satellite orbiting in space, and there's a black hole, and they always throw some crazy question in there. Don't even bother, man. Just guess and move on. You're just wasting your time on those. If it's not obvious to you, don't get bogged down. You either know it or you don't know it for physics. And knowing it comes down to knowing the equations. So the more equations you can memorize, the better. And then hit that UWorld over and over again. Actually practice using the equations, because knowing them is not simply enough. And like I said, you can do this yourself, but you can also just copy it from my video if you want to copy down all the equations. These are all the equations that you really need to know for this exam. Moving on, we're going to go into some bio and biochem. Let's let me scroll down real quick to show the rest of these. Okay. There we go. Biochem. So I would do a similar thing for biochem. I made some complete metabolic pathways charts. You need to know your glycolysis, all the steps, all the enzymes, your PDH complex, your Krebs cycle, stuff like that. Don't be afraid to just type this up and organize it so you can think back to this chart on your exam. You can think, okay, I typed up all the steps. I made the yellow box telling me what the rate limiting step was. If you can make tables like this and practice testing yourself, you ask yourself, okay, what is the enzyme for this first step of glycolysis? Close your eyes, bang, hexokinase. Just test yourself on this every day. Just do a few enzymes a day for a couple months, and this is going to add up. And really practice knowing the net investment, the products, the steps, every step of the way. Make sure you got it down. If you can use mnemonics, the more inappropriate they are, the better they stick in your mind. Pardon the language, but it's true. If you can use mnemonics that are inappropriate, it's going to stick in your mind a lot better on test day. Other than that, I would say just focus on understanding the purposes of these pathways, okay? Knowing the steps is great, but you also sort of need to know which hormones are involved, your insulin, all those sort of hormones that are going to dictate when glycolysis and when sugar is being uptaken or not uptaken, okay? There are great resources that you can look up, basically a list of all the hormones you need to know for the MCAT. There are Quizlets and Quizlets and Quizlets galore out there. If you just Google MCAT hormone Quizlet, they'll come up. You can test yourself on those, the practice modes in Quizlet, and get those down. Another thing I would suggest is, and this is super easy, knowing the one-letter abbreviations for all the amino acids. I probably got 3 or 4 questions right just simply from knowing the one-letter abbreviations. They're going to try and catch you on the simple things on your MCAT. So don't gloss over all the little, the K, what does K stand for? What's the abbreviation for arginine, lysine, things like that. Make sure you know all of those little tidbits and so on and so forth. Now I'm just going to give you some final advice. The MCAT is an exam you can't let get in your head. You can't let it stress you out. I know a 7-8 hour exam is super intimidating, but it's only going to be intimidating for the first week of studying. After you study 7 days in a row and you wake up in the morning on that 8th day, it just becomes routine for you. You're studying. What are you doing today? You're studying for the MCAT. What are you doing tonight? You're studying for the MCAT. Take breaks, but don't forget that this is all about consistency. If you study for 3+ months, just a couple hours a day after you get home from class, put in 4 hours before bed, you're going to be ready for this exam. It's really testing your ability to prepare for something, because remember, once you get to medical school, there's going to be step 1, step 2, there's going to be step 3 in residency. You're going to take your boards, you're going to have to recertify your boards, for the rest of your life. And this is really setting you up for success. If you can do well on your MCAT, you're going to do well on step 1, you're going to do well on step 2. So you might as well do it right the first time, right? You might as well figure out how to study for a big exam now while you're still in pre-med, and you can take this exam several times over. There's no penalty for taking the MCAT several times when you're applying to medical school. I know several people who took it 3-4 times. Obviously you want a better score, but they're not going to penalize you for taking it again and having to get a better score and reapply. Now, when it comes to step 1 and step 2, if you don't pass those the first time, they might be looking at you sort of out of the side of their eye when you're applying to residency and not really sure about you. But right now, the MCAT is a great time to just learn how to study for these big exams. Take it seriously, but hey, you learned this material. You took physics in undergrad. You took OChem in undergrad. You've seen this before. You just need to figure out how to now get tested on it at the level of what a medical school wants to see from a pre-med student. And if you really put in the time, you don't let it freak you out, you find a couple of buddies that are also pre-med and are going to be studying alongside of you, you're going to do great. Surround yourself with people who are in the same mindset as you. Go to your pre-med club meetings, ask your buddies, hey, do you want to come down on Thursday night and we're going to be studying in the lounge in the library for a few hours, and we're going to be sharing tips, quizzing each other on things about the MCAT. Do that through and through your entire time you're studying for. And then once you take it, you can pat your buddies on the back, and then you can get ready for medical school, because I know you're going to do great. Anyways, if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. I'm obviously not a very big channel, so I'll get back to you pretty quickly. And like I said, I am a first-year medical student, so it's been a year or so since I took my exam, so I may not be 100% in the loop on all the new stuff about the MCAT, but like I said, I've taken the exam, I've done well in the exam. I'm very open to giving advice and telling you what worked for me and what didn't work for me, okay? Take care, everybody. We'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.